G'day, ZiggyD here, finally back with some Diablo 3 news, and two fairly major pieces of news actually at that, sort of interconnecting into what we can expect to see in patch 1.0.8 and beyond that, so things that we're expecting to see after 1.0.8. So the first thing is that there's been a developer journal, as you can see here, released by Travis Day, and it talks a lot about itemization update. Now, sort of connecting in with that, we also have another post on the forum by Travis Day about what we can expect to see specifically in patch 1.0.8. So I'll go over that first because, you know, that's the most immediate thing that's going to happen. So the first thing is increased mob density. They've been talking about this for a while, but the idea is to bring Acts 1, 2, and 4 up in mob density to be in line with Act 3. Everyone knows Act 3 is the best place to farm, and pretty much everyone farms in Act 3, unless you are sort of, you know, just doing it for a bit of fun in one of the other acts, or if you're hunting keys. Other than that, there's really no other reason at the moment to visit Acts 1, 2, or 4. Now, what they're doing is they'd like to they've talked a little bit about this and in the developer journal, basically making it close enough. So Act 3 might still be the most efficient, but close enough such that other factors like, you know, how much you enjoy the area and how many demonic essences and things like that you think you can get will play a larger role in your selection of areas to farm. So hopefully, we'll see things like Acts 1 and 2 having enough mobs in them, you know, having enough skeletons in Act 1 that you can farm in there while still getting decent XP per hour, and you know, and you can enjoy those acts. Because I personally really like Act 1, and I would play Act 1 a lot more than I'd play Act 3 if I had the opportunity to do so. You know, if it felt like I wasn't, you know, putting myself at a severe disadvantage by doing so. So having Act 1 increase in monster density, which is just fun anyway, like having a lot more skeletons packed into a crypt is just going to make it more fun anyway. So that's an awesome change, and we can expect to see that for 1.0.8. As for the, you know, how much they increase the mob density, we can't really tell until we test that out. Maybe if it goes onto a PTR, I'll be able to jump onto the PTR and, you know, bring you guys some footage on that. So the other one is multi-craft. This is sort of just a convenience factor, but it's something a lot of people have been asking for. Basically, you say, I want to craft 20 shoulder pieces or 20 swords or whatever you want to craft of. You just put in a number, click craft, and it does it all. So you don't have to sit there and manually click it. So you can have Diablo 3 running in the background, craft some stuff on autopilot, and, you know, watch some YouTube videos or something like that. So that's a pretty cool one there. The other one, that improvement that's set for 1.0.8 is an improved auction house compare tool, specifically talking about legendaries. So at the moment when you use the compare tool on a legendary, it just finds that legendary. It doesn't actually compare the stats of that legendary, which this will be even more important in the future because they're making some changes to legendaries that will make it crucial to be able to search for the stats of the legendaries that you want to find specifically. So that'll be a nice addition, because it's very annoying when you're trying to find an upgrade of a certain type of legendary, but you have to manually input the stats and everything like that. So that's pretty cool changes. Now let's talk a little bit about the developer journal. Now, skipping over all of this, because, you know, this is all interesting, but it's sort of just mindset stuff. The most important thing here is we have so, for example, if you found a Heart of Iron from a level 63 monster, its base armor would be increased to that of the Archon armor. So basically, in the past, they made it so that item stats would roll based on the monster level that they dropped off. So what this meant was that any items that dropped in Inferno would roll to eye level 63 if you were playing on Monster Power 1 or if you're in Act 3 or higher. So that was a really good change, because it meant that the variety of items that were actually good or had potential to be good improved, you know, increased. So that was a really good change. But something I myself and a lot of other people have been talking about is, why don't they have the potential for any legendary in the game to drop in Inferno, but just have it roll its stats in line with Inferno? So obviously that would need some rebalancing, because some low level legendaries, if they rolled Inferno stats, would actually be really overpowered. So that sort of thing would need balancing, but it would make the game so much more interesting, because a lot of, you know, Diablo 2, Path of Exile, a lot of action RPGs have it so that low-level legendaries can actually be very useful in certain builds, and hopefully this change means that that's going to happen. So what they're doing is they're talking about they may be able to allow legendaries from earlier in the game to drop in Inferno and have the stats roll Inferno stats. So he mentioned specific the Leoric Signet, love the Leoric Signet but hate wearing a level 17 ring. Instead of, farming Act 2 normal to find the Leoric Signet, maybe now you can find them in Inferno and get eye level 63 stats on a Leoric Signet. So that would be very overpowered, but we'll see how it goes and how they go about balancing that. But that is an incredible change in my opinion, because it's just going to open up the amount of legendaries that we can use to a great degree. Like, there's some really awesome low-level legendaries that are just never seen. They have awesome art, they have awesome, theming to them. Some of them even have like awesome stats that you just can't find anywhere else. But you just can't wear them because they do 100 DPS, and any rare in Inferno is going to do 5 to 10 to 15 times that. So this I'm very excited for. These are huge steps in the right direction. So the next part they're talking about in this blog, in this itemization blog, is, well, it's called less is more, but basically it looks like two things are happening. In 1.0.8, they should be adding an identify all option, to the cheers of many, I'm sure. So, Deckard Cain is making a return in some form. There's going to be something you're going to be able to click and it'll identify everything in your inventory. This is actually, it might not sound that major, but I think this is actually a fairly big change, just in, how willing I'll be to pick up rares and other things in my inventory, because currently I really only pick up very specific rares. Firstly because I know they have better potential, but also because just the time it takes to identify and sort through all of those other ones just makes it not worth picking up a lot of different types of rares. Now this might not change that too much, but it'll help a little bit. Maybe I'll be more willing to load up my inventory and then click identify all and check them out and see if I happen to have found a good item. So that's pretty exciting there as well. But there's nothing really firm in this particular section, but they're saying that they want to reduce the amount of rares that drops, but instead have them roll better. So the example I give here is, it's an item currently rolls between 1 and 100 intelligence. Now, imagine that they drop 25% as often, so as they do now, so 75% reduced drop rate, but instead they rolled 75 to 100 intelligence. So the variety of how good those items can be is shifted towards the end of the spectrum, but they drop much less often. Now anyone who farms Inferno pretty consistently would probably be a fan of this change, because there's so many rares that drop nowadays with all of the magic find stats we have and just the speed that we're farming at as well. So having less drop and having them be better overall would be a nice change. However, there's sort of an issue with this as well, because if you are shifting everything towards the end of the spectrum, it just pushes that power up. That there's this constant power up shift in Diablo 3 because of the way they've set it up with no refreshing leaves and things like that, where every change they're making, items are just getting more and more powerful. And this doesn't directly increase the range of that power, but it is still shifting everything upwards. So it's sort of a bit of a so-so sort of change. However, I think just in terms of enjoyment in playing the game, having less rares drop and having them be a bit more special, I think is overall a really good change, because rares should feel rare, and they don't currently feel rare at all. So that's a pretty cool one there. The other one they talk about here is just gold sinks being more exciting. They talked about how they've added this bind on account crafting and how that they feel is a reasonable gold sink, but they want to improve gold sinks in the future basically, but not have them be just something boring that's there just to manage gold inflation. But nothing too specific in this section here. So this last section here is interesting. Nothing too firm in here about what they're changing, but it hints at a lot of what they're looking at and some options they're considering. So the title is Farm Monsters and not the Auction House. Basically they want to shift focus back to the monsters, which I'm sure people don't believe that, like or they just want us to focus on the auction house so they get all our money, but really it's in their best interest to have people enjoy the game and play the game as the actual game, and then to use the auction house just to trade their gear when they need to. So basically, skipping through a lot of this, what they're talking about is different ways they can make farming the monsters more exciting. So one thing we've already talked about is increasing monster density. I think that's a good change towards this. I don't think they specifically mentioned this in that section, but I feel like that impacts that. Other things I've talked about is having like targeted legendaries, which is interesting. It's something people I think would like. The example they use here is having the butcher having a higher chance of farming, dropping the butcher's carver. So I think that can make the game more interesting, because if you want a specific item, then you're more encouraged to go check out some different content instead of Act 3, Inferno, Buns Power 4 or whatever being the best way to get all of the legendaries in the game. If you feel like you want to get certain types of legendaries, and maybe combined with the other legendary changes that are happening, this could be pretty interesting. You might have a reason to go, kill the Skeleton King to get a certain legendary, or to go farm mobs in a certain area. I think that could be pretty interesting, so I hope they're seriously considering how they could make that work. The other change that was interesting but not very relevant to most players, I feel, is to have bosses have a guaranteed drop of a legendary the first time you kill them in each difficulty. Yeah, that's interesting, but again, not very relevant to most players. Most people now are farming, the higher difficulties. They're not progressing through the game, but there are still people leveling ults. I still get people commenting on my videos that have just picked up Diablo 3 for the first time and, are clearing through. And that I think that could be pretty exciting. It would really pull people through in progression, knowing, if I just get past this next piece of content and kill this boss, I'm going to get a legendary 100%. I don't know what that legendary will be, but it could be really awesome. And also, a major problem I have with as progressing through the game, which has been fixed a little bit, but it's still a big issue, I think, is as you're progressing through the game and leveling a low level character, you see none of the awesome legendaries. Like, the way that people find most legendaries is by farming the same content over and over, and that only happens in Inferno. You don't farm the same content over and over in the low difficulties, you just progress the whole way through the game. So that means a lot of people, pretty much everyone misses the legendaries. The only way I've seen a lot of low level legendaries is by intentionally getting them on the auction house just to see what they're like. So having, guaranteed legendary drops in the lower difficulties specifically, I think could make the game a bit more interesting and allow people to see those legendaries. But then, the other change they're doing where these might be able to drop in Inferno as well, it achieves that same result. But, if we're improving both the end game and the early game, then that's pretty cool with me, I think. So there's some other, there's some interesting stuff in here. If you're really interested in the mindset of itemization, how the developers think about it, this blog's well worth a read, because there's a lot of their thought process and things like that. Say what you want about Blizzard, they take a long time to get patches out sometimes, but each patch they've done, in recent times, the last couple patches have all been changing the game in ways people have been asking for. A lot of people have been asking for, this idea of having legendaries, low-level legendaries dropping in Inferno and rolling up, and this is something they're talking about in this blog, so I think they do listen. They do listen. It just might take them a little while to get the actual patches out, but the game's taking major steps in the right direction. I'm pretty excited to see what 1.0.8 holds and future patches, and I'm keen to try them out and bring content for you guys, on those patches and what happens. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm ZiggyD, and thanks for watching.